Good evening, everyone. I think it's good time to start. I'm just going to start from where we stopped last week, and just a quick recap of all that we said last week, very quickly for the next 2-3 minutes. And if you can still hear me, can you please type yes? So I'm going to have Ayo, Faith, and Ifeanyi as my support today. Good. So Faith, Ayo, and Ifeanyi, I'm going to have the three of you as support today. And this is what I want you to do. In case someone is saying they can't hear me, and if the three of you can still hear me, just say yes. But the moment three of you can't hear me, I know there is issue somewhere. So that I won't get distracted. So if people are typing, so you have to keep an eye on the chat room for me if possible. If people are typing that they can't hear me, and you all to hear, just type yes. Thank you very much. Thanks, SDG. Okay, good. So we're just going to do a quick recap of what we said last week, and also quickly dive. We've got a lot of things to cover today. So I might be sending in a change request as the training moves on. I might be sending a change request to extend the class by another 10 or 15 minutes. So let's see what we can get from there. So last week we told ourselves what project is, what project management is. We told ourselves what portfolio, what program, and at the end of the day, we said what project is. Okay, so Lekon is saying it can't hear me. Can you still hear me? Ayo, can you hear me? And Faith. Okay, good stuff. So Lekon, you have to work on your own device. Good. So we spoke about all of that last week, and also we spoke about the 7 themes. We introduced ourselves to the 7 values of principles of project management as regards Prince2. We try to differentiate between Prince2 and PMI methodology. We try to differentiate between those two, and few questions came out. Which one do you think is good, and all of that? And I say, you know what? If you're in the UK, yes, definitely Prince2 is the right thing for you to get. And also, we told ourselves about the seven principles. The 7 principles of project management last week. We told ourselves that, you know what, you have to learn. Yeah, there is something called learn from past experience. We told ourselves that, you know what, you need to tailor it to suit whatever you're looking out for. We told ourselves that you need to manage by exception. You have to manage by exception. And we told ourselves all of that. Then from there, we moved into what are the 7 themes. We moved into the 7 themes. We moved into the 7 themes, and we said the 7 themes are business case, organization, quality, plans, risk. And we started out with business case last week. So that's exactly where I will be starting out from. So if you have any question or questions from me from last week, you can type them into the chat box, and I'll pick them up as we proceed. And also any questions today, don't wait to the end of the class before you ask your question. The moment you remember or you've got a question to ask, make sure you type the question in there, and I'll pick it up as we move ahead so that it doesn't disturb the flow, and also it links up with whatever you're thinking about when you asked the question. And also, please, let's endeavor not to go off mute. Let's try and stay on muted at every point in time, and that will definitely help us to not distract the class and all that. Okay, good. So last week we started off with the 7 themes. We say, you know what, we've got 7 principles, 7 themes, and 7 processes in Prince2. Prince2 is centered around all of these 21 things that we've spoken about. So the first thing we said was business case. Don't forget that one of the principles of Prince2 is business justification, meaning as you progress on your project, you must make sure that the project gets justified, meaning we are always going back to our business case to look at, okay, are we really doing what we said we will do? Are we still going to realize the benefit? Is this particular project still worth doing? And I could remember last week, I shared with you about the guy that was supposed to sell the UV glasses for looking at the eclipse of the moon. And where his glasses, the eclipse of the moon arrived or happened earlier than when the project was supposed to be delivered. So there was no point doing the project again. And that's exactly what this is saying. It's saying, the purpose of a business case is to establish mechanism to judge whether the project is desirable, viable, or achievable. Is this project really viable? Is this project really achievable? A typical example is what is happening at this point. Let's assume that, Johnson & Johnson are still trying to do their vaccine. They are still trying as much as possible to produce a vaccine. Or let's assume it's Moderna that is trying to produce a vaccine. And you know what? Just within the blink of an eye, COVID-19 just disappeared from the surface of the earth. You know what? So they need to ask themselves, Johnson & Johnson needs to ask themselves, is it really worth it still doing this vaccine in mass production and all that if COVID-19 just disappeared from the face of the earth like that? So you just have to continue. And for everything you do, and I'm sure you've written something about, you've written a mental business case in your head before attending this training. You're telling yourself that, what's the purpose of me attending this training? The purpose of me attending this training is to get a better understanding, I get a better knowledge, and all of that. And from there, I can get things done. I can understand if I have to go with BA, if I have to go with project management, if I have to do this, if I have to do that. So along the line, let's assume I said, if you are not an engineering student, if you didn't graduate with an engineering degree, if you're a scientist, if you're a business admin person and all of that, this is not for you. Let's assume I said this morning, this evening, coming in, I just say, this training is strictly for engineering graduates or people with engineering degree. You can see that you just have to look at your business case again. Is this training still desirable for me? Is this training still viable for me? Is this training still achievable for me? If you're a scientist, if you're a chemistry graduate or a chemist, you just have to tell yourself that no, it's not worth disturbing myself about this stuff. So what you've done so far is you've measured how you're progressing with your business case, and you've realized that this is not desirable, this is not viable. You're not going to get anything out of it because it is meant for engineering graduates and not yourself. Does that make any sense? So in life, we do our business cases as well, just to justify what we're doing, to justify our career, to justify a line of business we want to go into, to justify our movement in life, our decision in life as well. That is what is called a business case. And you know what? Both customer and supplier should have a business case, meaning Deji is a sponsor of this particular project. Let's assume he's a sponsor of this particular project. Deji is going to have his own business case along the line. You yourself that is coming for this particular training, you will definitely have your own business case. But the major business case for this project, sorry, can someone please help Leko out? Leko can't hear me, so someone should please help him out to say, the signal is good, he's struggling. Yeah, just tell him maybe you need to restart or something. If you can help me type that to him to say restart your gadget, we can hear him clearly. Everything is going on fine and all that. Okay, so that is what the business case talks about. And like I said, that is what you're using to measure your benefit as well. The orange part is the benefit management approach contains the actions and benefit reviews. That means we need to use that to measure our benefit. What are the minimum requirements? The business is what will tell you those things about minimum requirements as well. Create, maintain, review, and update business certification. We need to define roles and responsibilities and produce and maintain a business case. Last week, I told us, I might call on anybody. Maybe that's the reason why the number seems to have reduced today, because I said I might call on anybody today to try and quickly tell us something about the business case I've asked you to develop and all that. So I'm gonna call on Faith Do I have faith? How many faiths do I have there? It's just one faith. All right, Faith, just for you alone, if you're in a good place that you can talk, can you tell us the content of your business case? Things you've captured in your business case. If you did it, if you didn't do it, just tell me no. So I've got 5 minutes to do that. Anyone? Okay, Faith is not responding. Maybe she's not there. Okay, no, she didn't do it. All right, Lara. Is Lara there? Does that mean nobody did the business case? If you actually looked into the business case or you did it, can you type yes? Anybody? All right, thanks, Ayo. Any other person? Any taker? Any other person that did it? All right, thank you, Zikla. We've got 40 on this line today. Okay, minus the admin, three of them, that's 37. You're telling me that out of the 37 people, only 2 people did the assignment. Anybody else? All right, Ayo, let me put you on the spot since it's just so don't worry, I won't call you. But Ayo, okay, D saying this is my first class, that's fine. Ayo, if you can unmute yourself, if where you are is clear, if you can unmute yourself, can you just tell us the content, the table of content of your business case? I have topics. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, please. The why, okay. The options, okay. The benefits, okay. The time scales, okay, okay. Cost, okay. Risk, okay. Appraisal, okay. All right, thank you. So guys, I'm asking you to do this. Oh, okay, Lara was in the last class, that's fine. I'm asking you to do this because you know what? I've seen 140 page business case before, and I've seen a 1-page business case before. So the level of your project or the weight of your project will determine what is expected of you to be captured in your business case. What your organization is using, the template within your organization also will determine what you will use within your business case. And now most organizations have got their in-house templates. So all you just need to do as a project manager or as a PMO person, when you get into an organization and they are saying that they want to develop a business case, is to ask for the central PM or the central project office, the template for the business case. There will always be one. And if there is none, that makes it open for you to go and adopt any. But I can assure you that most organizations will always have one. So you can pick up that, or you just need to pick up the template and just fill in all the things you need to fill in. Some business case will tell you that, you know what, we don't want to have a time scale in our business case for now, because this is just justifying what the business will be. While some business case will definitely have time scales. Some will have appraisal like what I listed. Some might not have it. Some might just have, you know, the why, the options, the benefits, and the cost. That's what some will have. While some will have the risk, they will have the benefit, the assumptions, the constraint. We'll have a lot of things inside. Does that make any sense to us? Okay, so that is that about business case. Next theme is called organization. For organization is talking about, you know what, how do we structure the organization? And I'm sure a lot of you must have heard about the word governance. This is where governance comes in. This is telling us, we need to structure the organization in a way that will make reporting easy, that will make authority easy. Remember, when we spoke about the principles, we said management by exception. We said when you're managing by exception, one of the things you do by managing by exception is to give authority to the project manager, the team, some level of authority to the project manager, and and as well as the team manager or the team entirely. So the purpose of the organization is to define and establish a project structure of accountability and responsibilities. So here, when you go on a project, one of the things you want to have whenever you go on a project first is, can I see the org chart? Can I see the organizational chart of this team, of this particular program, of this particular project? When you see that, that will give you understanding of how the project is structured, resource-wise, or roles and responsibility-wise. Remember also, one of the principles of Prince 2 is to define roles and responsibilities. This is where organization comes in as a theme to say, we need to make sure we manage the organization. Who is a program sponsor? Who is the user? Who is a senior supplier? Who exactly is the project manager? Who is a team manager? Who is the person, the quality assurance person? What is the change authority doing here? Who is a project support? This is where you will see all of these played out within an organization. So Prince 2 is saying, on your project, as a project manager, make sure that all of this is well defined. Make sure you have a project board that takes authority, that makes decision on things. Make sure your project, you as a project manager, your roles and responsibilities are defined. You know what you need to do on a day-to-day basis. Team manager, you as a project manager will definitely be managing few teams, maybe the testing team, you're managing the DevOps guys, you're managing the quality guys, you're managing that. So as a project manager, you must have a team manager that is managing various teams within your project or within your program. Makes sense? And also for project assurance, it's always separated from the project manager's role or from the reporting line of a project manager, even though there's always a dotted line between the project assurance person, because this is the person that is coming to check the quality of the work you're doing. So if this person reports to the project manager, then the project manager there is conflict of interest. So this particular person who talks about the assurance of a project will definitely report straight to the project board with a dotted line to the project manager or to the team manager. So this is how the structure is always done. Let me quickly let me show you the structure so that you can understand what I'm talking about. So this is how a project structure is expected. Am I still sharing my screen? Can you still see my screen, please? If you can, say yes. Okay, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Faith. All right, good. So this is how a project governance or an organization is structured to say, what? We need to look, who is the project board? The project board are the guys that make decisions. These are the project sponsor. So we have the executive, we have the senior user who is acting like the user. It's a senior user. So it's one that is acting as the user. It's one that is giving you the requirement to say, what, this is what, for some of you that will be going into, that will be doing Scrum, or working in the agile environment, you'll be hearing, what, as a user, or let's actually want to build a website, you want to say as a user or as a visitor to this particular website or as an admin to this website, I want to be able to do this. So you're writing the user story. So a senior user is the one that is acting that would say, well, what, for this particular application you're developing, we should be able to do this. We should be able to do that. We should be able to do this and all of that. While the executive is the one that is making the decision, that is putting the money down, acting for the corporate organization to bring the money down, while we have a senior supplier who is the person developing to say, what, this is what we'll develop. This is what we'll develop for you So they are acting at that top level. Majorly in organizations, these are directors. These are directors that has authority over the resources that can say, you know what, it's a finance project. Yes, I'll give you 3 people in the finance department. It's a procurement project. Yes, I've got authority to release this guy. So they are at that top level, and they've got authority within the organization to be able to work on the project. Then from there, we have a project manager who reports directly to them. We have a project manager who reports directly to them. And also we have on the same level with them, we have who we call the change authority. Remember last week I told you about the change manager to say, you know what, that is a separate role entirely. That's a big role, massive role, and they pay them well. All you just want to focus upon is, you know what, change. I'm here to manage your changes for you on this particular program or project. Most especially, projects don't really have change managers. It's massive programs that has got a change manager where, you know what, things are quite volatile. Things can change along the line and they need someone to come manage it. That's when you now have a change manager or change authority. This change authority might not be one person. It might just be a group of people. And on some project, this is how it works on some project. You see the project board that is circled in purple, whatever, with the project manager, with the project assurance manager, forms the change authority most times. And I'm sure last week you heard me saying, you know what, change control board. This change control board, it's a board that sits to look at the changes. When I get to change, I'll talk more about that. Okay, so we have a team manager that reports to project manager. Then we now have a team members that report to the team members. Sometimes if we don't have team managers, there are some projects, a lot of projects that you work on that you don't have team managers, or you just have this project manager straight to team members. And it happens a lot. Most of the projects I've worked on, I'm not sure, there's only one project I've worked on that we have team manager. Of all the projects I've worked on in the past and all the organizations I've worked with, most people don't use team managers. Then you now have the project support. The project support is helping the project manager, helping the team members, and the project support is what we call the project management office, basically. This is where we have the support, where you have to support the project manager to look at the risk, the issues, the dependencies, especially to look at the whole cardiac, as well as the plan, as well as the status report for the whole project. And also we have the business, we have the user supplier project assurance as well. So that is what we have, as a project governance or the organization. Is that clear, please? Any question? Is 30 minutes. Okay, Tawo is asking that where does a product manager sit on this particular comment? So whenever we're using a waterfall, so the organization I just showed you now is strictly a waterfall organization. And in this particular part, sometimes a product manager can act as a senior supplier sometimes, even though it doesn't work that way. It's separated. Same thing with business. If you notice, I didn't show you anything about business analysts because we believe that business analyst at this point in time does not really sit within the project management framework. And same goes for a product manager. A product manager does not really sit within a project management framework to actually do the work itself. A product manager is coming, telling us what we need to do, telling us how the product should be done, liaising between the sponsor, the senior supplier, as well as the senior user in most cases, and all that. So in this particular organization, we don't see them as sitting under the project management because we believe that they are not managing the project with us, they are only coming with their own input. And that is why if you notice that when I showed you the flow of the project, we have the input, we have the tools and techniques, and the output. So what we are managing at this point, we're managing the output of work. What their own is, they are bringing in their own input. What we need to do, they've written all of their product They've written all of their product documents. We have our requirement analysis. We have our requirement traceability matrix. And that's exactly what we're working on. And we're calling them to come and look at what we're doing for them. And most especially, what I've seen in the past, it's a funny scenario. What I've seen in the past is a product manager acting as the project assurance, person, basically to look at, okay, this is what we want you to do. How are you doing it? Have you done what we ask you to do? And that is exactly what that was all about on that particular project. But we see them as not sitting down under the program, the project organogram itself. Does that make any sense? Okay. So next to that is quality. So for this quality, the purpose is to define and implement the means by which the project will verify products that are fit for purpose. So who does this? Sometimes on project, the project manager is expected, to define and implement the means by which the project will verify products that are fit for purpose. And also we always have this in the business case. Sometimes we have it. So when we move from the business case, when I show you the processes, you understand. When we move from the business case to the project initiation document, inside the project initiation document, we have all of these written in there to say, what exactly is the acceptance criteria. So quality here is where we're writing the acceptance criteria to say, okay, I'll answer that later. So we're saying that is a quality is acceptance criteria. At this point, we're writing the acceptance criteria to say, you're saying, you would develop this application. This application must be able to log in to users for this particular application. When people are filling in their biodata, the age, the sex, the email address, and the last name and the first name, it's a must for people to fill in. So whenever we're writing our quality acceptance check to say, for this, when people are filling a biodata form, it is a must for them to be able to fill this. Forms will not be submitted unless they have this. So you can see that we've written as an acceptance criteria for that particular landing page. So the quality check is to check if those things are done. So when they call the project assurance guys, the project assurance or the quality assurance manager comes in and is asking the project manager to say, as a team, your team said you will deliver this, but I just noticed that I was able to submit this form without putting in my age. I was able to submit this form without putting in my email address. I was able to submit this form. So that means at that particular time, remember, I told you the two definitions of quality last week. I said the first one is fitness for use, and the number two is what? Conformance to requirement. At that point in time, that project is yet to conform to requirement. So you can see, so you're saying that, Mr. Project Manager, unfortunately, you've not conformed to the requirement as written in our requirement documentation or requirement document. So can you please go back and make sure that this is done, that is done, that is done. So at that point in time, we're defining what's the quality management approach. How often do you think? And this is where Agile is different. Don't forget, Agile, we've got all our meetings, we've got our retrospective meeting, we've got our all of those meetings for us to be able to look at what was delivered within that period, within that particular sprint, for us to see what was delivered within that particular sprint, for us to look at that. Okay, you display the product for the customer to see, okay, what have we learned and all of that. At that point, that's when you're picking up things. So for a waterfall environment, we don't have that, but you have to schedule these into the plan. This must be scheduled into your plan to say, we're delivering this particular product. And that's one of the, if you remember, one of the things we said is managed by stage. You manage it by stage. Your project, so at a particular stage, when you finish the particular product, you're calling the project assurance, say, can you come and look at the quality check? So you're defining the the quality management approach. How do we want to do that? Who is doing what? Define the roles and responsibilities. Specify customers' quality expectation and acceptance criteria. Use lessons to inform quality planning. How are we planning it? How often do we want to check it? Do you want the quality assurance person to work with the project manager as a project is progressing, or you want them to come and do the whole thing at the end of the day? Coming to do it at the end of the day doesn't really work, because let's assume it's not the first product or the first release was where the problem was, and yet we're on release 10, then there is problem. And that is why Agile, it seems to be more to be acceptable now within the IT world than Waterfall, because Waterfall is saying, let's go through the requirement, let's go through the requirements, the build, the design, the build, the testing, the implementation, and then the hypercare before we can start talking about what exactly is the defect. But here you have to plan it. A lot of people are now doing it, say we're planning that quality check with our project, whether it's quality assurance or it is quality, what's the other one? Quality control, whether quality assurance or quality control, where you use your inspection, you use your investigation and all of that to look into that. Lincoln, I hope I've answered your question with that. So we have talked about quality planning, customers' quality expectation. So as a project manager or as a PMO person, sometimes the PMO can be asked to be the check for these, because we have a document already. Don't forget, we have a document. It's just like what testers are doing. Testers have got their checklist. They've got their checklist saying, you want to test these, and at the end of the day, while they're doing that, while we're doing all of that, we're coming to say, okay, you say you will test this. When you tested that, what are the defects? What do we need to do, and all of that? So there are controls, there are quality controls in place to look at the quality of the work that is being done. And that's exactly what this is talking about. Don't forget, at the end of the day, two things can only happen at the end of the day. You either accept the product because the product is fit for use, the product conforms the requirement. And another thing is you either reject the product. Rejecting the product is saying, you know what, we're not totally rejecting the product, but we want to go and do whatever we've asked you to do. And this is where the quality control comes in, because you have to record summaries of the results of the quality method. If there are problems, we subject that stuff to change control. So if you're saying that, okay, you've not done what you're supposed to do, time is running out, then we need to change control. It's not doing the product is not doing what we expect the product to do. There's a change control. Let's go into planning again. Let's review the planning. Let's do the work and come back and test again. So for testing, and testers will tell you this is more of an iterative. So for us, it is more of a quality check within the project is iterative. You plan, you do, and that's what we call the plan, do, check, act. The plan, do, check, act is saying you plan, you do, you check, you act. You plan, you do, you check, you act. You plan it. After planning, you do it. You check what you are doing. If what you are doing is not really in line with what you need to do, you act. Then you go through that cycle again until you are able to get what is expected to be gotten. And that is why you can see, you know what, is it fit for purpose? No, then we have to do a rework. Test, then quality records and all of that, then get approval. At the end of the day, what you're looking for is to get approval. The moment you get it, the moment it's accepted, then it is approved. Acceptance is different from approval. You can accept and dump it, but the moment it is approved, that means you have you've done everything that is expected to be delivered. That's the final stage of it all for you to get approval. Makes sense? Any question? Okay, we move. So next to that is planning. This takes the chunk of the work on a project. For a waterfall, and I'll be saying waterfall because a lot of questions came last week, and Scrum, that is why Scrum is Scrum is moving away from this a little, or agile as a whole is moving from this a little to say, you know what, we don't have to plan what needs to be done in the next 1 year. But if you are using a waterfall, waterfall is saying, guys, let's sit down. Let's plan what we're going to do for the next 1 year or for the next 2 years of this particular project. Even if we don't have full understanding of what needs to be done now, but let's make sure that we at least capture what needs to be done in the next 2-3 months. Then by the time we're about to approach the next 2-3 months, would plan more of that again. That's what is called the rolling wave planning. The rolling wave planning is, let's plan what we need to do now. When we get to the break, we'll plan ahead, we'll plan ahead, we'll plan ahead. So you're planning in chunks as you move along the project. So what's the purpose of this? To facilitate communication control by defining the means of delivering the product. So this is all about the means of delivering the product. And most especially, you will spend a lot of your time. You will spend a lot of your time planning, because there is an adage that says, you know what, if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. And this is what, and this is where it's funny. This is now where most agile environment miss it. Most agile environment will always miss it in this planning stage. And that's why at the end of the day, they will agree to say, you know what, let's just do an hybrid of both. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people are not comfortable to say, let's just get our product backlog. Now, product backlog, we're going into this particular sprint. Let's pick up this particular user stories for this particular stuff. Let's do this sprint planning. When we do this sprint planning, let's go into that. And yet all of that user story are inside, or the epics or whatever you want to call it, they're all inside your backlog. But you know what? A lot of folks, a lot of directors, a lot of project directors, a lot of organizations, program portfolio directors don't really feel comfortable. What they want is, you know what? All of these things you have in your backlog, is it possible for us to plan it? Let's plan, even if you're not planning it into detail, let's plan it. Let's try to score them and understand how long it's going to take us, so that we can know how long the whole project is going to take us. Even though we know that each sprint within this organization or within this particular project shouldn't be more than 3 weeks. Let's assume that is what the policy of organization is saying. Shouldn't be more than 3 weeks. Okay, we're having a time box of 3 weeks per sprint. By the time we're saying that, but we have 30 user story in our backlog. And we're saying that for this particular sprint, we can only handle 4 for the next 3 weeks and all of that. And meaning, and if we want to go by the principle of Scrum, that means is 4 for 3 weeks. How long is that going to take us? But a lot of project directors are saying, you know what, guys, I'm not comfortable with that. Can we sit down? Can we plan this? Can we just plan from start to finish, even though if you're not planning into detail, but let's understand what are the story points, what velocity are we using, and all of that to be able to do all of this particular project. So because of that, you not hang the organization, or you hang the project, say, no, well, you guys are planning from start to finish, then you guys are not doing agile at all. You guys are not being agile at all. So most of them will not come back, yeah, we want to do. It happened in one of the organizations that I've worked. That's why I'm explaining this. In one of the organizations, you know what, we did a deep dive. We did a 3-day deep dive planning, because the CEO says, I want to understand how long it's going to take you, whether you're using Agile, Waterfall, ROP, or whatever you're using. I just want to know how long this project is going to take us. I want to know the cost of this particular project, so that we can plan for it within the year end. And because of that, that made them to actually do a proper planning, and we had to reverse back to what we call the Agile, Waterfall Agile environment. We call it the Agile. So that is planning. Within the project, you will always see planning, and Prince 2 emphasized so much on planning. And they say, well, for your planning, the minimum requirement you can have in your planning is 1, ensure the plans enable the business case to be realized. The business case you have developed, how are we going to go about it? What exactly is the steps we need to take? What do we need to do first? What do we need to do next? What do we need to do after that? How many people will be doing that? Who are the people that will be doing it? That is what planning is all about. They say, you know what, you need to define the roles and responsibility. Who? Produce project stage and exception plans. On this particular stage, what are the exception plans? What are the things, you know what, if we will say that we'll deliver this particular landing page, what are the exceptions? Meaning, you know what, we're saying you deliver this particular biodata landing page. If the biodata landing page doesn't click at once, we can still accept it because we know that it will still go to the next page. And if it goes to the next page, it will automatically save itself. So you can see that with that, we've got our planning exception. And you know, we say, you know, to create and maintain plans, projects, product description. And this product description still talk about what we said the last time, which is our, you know, our quality plan. Whenever you're doing your quality plan, you still have to discuss about what exactly is the product going to look like. The product, we want to check the quality. What is it going to look like? So that's why you can see all of these themes, all of these 7 themes, they work hand in hand. And these are the things you're managing all through the project. Don't forget, the first one we said was business case. From start to finish of your project, your business case is a living document. You want to always check your business case if the project is still progressing as it should. The next you want to do is you want to talk about your organization. You want to look at that. Is the project structure still working well? We want to talk about quality. Are we doing what we say we will do? Plan, are we working according to what we say we will work on, which is a plan? Makes sense. So they say, you know what, you need to draw a product flow diagram, your PFD, how the product will be delivered. And I love Prince 2 so much. Prince 2 seems to be the only one that emphasized about product breakdown structure. And I've worked in different organizations where they struggled with product breakdown structure. You know what? All they know is, you know what? We know the project. We know what we need to do according to the project. And for them, what they have is a work breakdown structure. But now, no, let's do the product breakdown structure. Product breakdown structure. Let's use a Formula 1 car, for example. A Formula 1 car, as an example, the car is the product, the final product. But with the car, the engine is a product that someone else is managing. The tires, someone else is managing the tires. The wheel, someone else is managing the wheel. The dashboard, someone else is managing. So you can see what we're trying to do is we're trying to break the product down into more manageable components that we can understand. What are the components of this massive car that we have? And you can see that a lot of people, different people, even within the tire, someone else is managing the thread, someone is managing the hole, someone else is managing that within the tire. While for the engine, someone else is managing the chassis, the this, that. So you can see that so we must have a product flow diagram, or what we call the product breakdown structure as well, to show how the product is within the scope. So if we have this will definitely help us. This will definitely help us to understand, okay, what exactly is the scope? What is in scope and what is not in scope? That is all about planning. So planning is so critical. And like I said last week, some people are employed to just face planning on a project. Just like I spoke about quality, some people are employed to just look at the quality. Same with business case. Some business analysts are employed just to come and look at the business case. So if you're on a project as a project manager, if your project is massive, you can have, you know, a planner on your project. You can have a quality manager on your project. You can have someone that will come and help you manage the governance. That's a governance manager, to look at the structure, make sure reporting is being done properly, make sure people are reporting, make sure you don't have blockers within your project. Make sure a business analyst is there to develop the business case, or you're contracting the business case to one of the Accenture and all of these guys to look at your business case for you. So you can see that for this particular project, for that massive project, you can actually have different people handling various parts of a business. Same thing goes with risk. You can have people, you can have a risk manager. And I was checking JobServe couple of days ago on Sunday or Saturday, I think. And I saw like few jobs about a project risk manager, and they really want to pay well. All they want this person to come and do is focus on risk. Just come in, focus on risk on this particular project. We have so many risks. Will you be able to manage this risk for us? And what are risks? Risk basically is the uncertain event. basically that can happen on a project, any uncertain event that can happen on a project is called a risk. And what is the purpose of this risk as a theme on the project? To identify, assess, and control uncertainty. Meaning on the project, and one of the things you want to do whenever you get on a project, as a project manager or as a PMO person, the risk log is your baby. It's no one else's baby, but your baby. So you must make sure that you document all the risk on the project. The risk you can think about, no risk is stupid. No, I'll repeat that. No risk is stupid. Just allow everyone to name the risk they can have, they can think about on the project. Make sure all of that is documented. So when they document the risk, as meaning identification of the risk, it is now when you now proceed to the next level, which is called the risk analysis. You now need to understand, okay, and whenever we're doing risk analysis, is to identify two things basically. What is the probability of this occurring, and what is a risk if it should occur? Let me give you a typical example about what happened 2 days ago in Stratford. 2 days ago in Stratford, something terrible happened, that the flood in Stratford was getting to the waist level. Now, if risk at that particular train station, risk of flood was not really identified at that point in time. Even if risk of flood had been identified, because the rain wasn't that heavy, the rain was not heavy at all. The rain was just few showers. So with those few showers, let's assume someone say, you know what, there's going to be few showers. What's the probability of flood occurring? Now, remember that one of the documents, someone asked me this particular question last week, that can you explain this? One of the first documents you work on is called lessons learned. So let's assume lessons learned from past experience. When rain fell in the last 10, in the last 5, in the last 3 years, when rain fell, when a 2-hour or 1-hour rain fell, do we think there was a kind of flood and all of that? So we're losing historical experience, historical inference to see, because of this, guys, the probability of flood occurring in Stratford is what? Now let's assume we're using three-way measurement. We're using low, medium, and high. So let me ask you, you can just type, let me ask you, for some of us that are in UK and London especially, do you think the probability of flood occurring in Stratford, do you think is low, medium, or high? Forget about what happened on Thursday. From your own experience, you've been to Westfield. You've been to Westfield. You've been to Westfield countless times and all of that. It's very, very low. Exactly. So you will have pointed that particular risk to be very low. But let's now come. So whenever you're doing your risk analysis, remember the first thing you do is you identify your risk. After identifying the risk, you now say, you know what, let's do a kind of qualitative risk analysis. What's the quality of this particular risk? So the quality of the risk is now saying, you know, what's the probability of this particular risk occurring? Is it low, high, or medium? Thank you, you say it's low. Now let's look at that. What is the impact if flood should happen in Stratford? Is the impact going to be low? Is it going to be high, or is it going to be medium? Don't forget, when you look at Stratford, Stratford is a business hub. Thank you, Hailish. Stratford is a business hub. Stratford has got international train station. Stratford has got DLR, National Rail, Jubilee Line. It's got overground. It's got overground as well. So you can see that the impact is quite high. So that is how to look at your risk. Remember, if someone should tell you, oh, flood in Stratford initially, what a stupid risk, flood in Stratford. No, wait, this is not Lekki, Lagos now. How can you be saying flood in Stratford? But you know what? When I saw the video when I saw the video 2 days ago, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was at the waist level and all that. Central line, thank you, Eileen. Central line too is there. So you can see that no risk is foolish as a project manager. It is now when you get to your analysis that you now need to start dropping the foolishness about those risks to say, you know what, let's look at the probability of this particular risk occurring. What is the impact if it should occur? What exactly is now our stance? How do we now respond? how do we respond to this particular risk if it should happen? And you can see we've got few responses to threat here. Should we avoid this risk? How do we avoid? If we avoid, that means we're not going. Let's assume someone walks in Stratford, or no, someone lives in Essex and works in central London. If you live in Essex and you work in central London and you want to go by train, there's no way you won't go through Stratford, except you want to go through Hornchurch and all that. So let's assume there's no Hornchurch route. That is the only route you've got. If that's the only route you've got, you're not saying, you know what, avoid. Avoid means you won't go to work that day. That's what avoid is saying. Reduce now says, you know what I can do is I'll take train. Then while taking train, I'll take bus from where I think the flood will be. Maybe take bus from Chadwell Heath or that down to that side. Fallback plan. What's my fallback plan? My fallback plan is to drive to work. How do I transfer? Transferring the risk is saying, you know what? I'm not coming. I'm just gonna get insurance for that particular work of the day. Get insurance. If I don't get to work that particular day, my insurance will still pay me my day fee. Accept it. You know, if you accept it, what will you do? You go into the flood. You know, we'll go into that. No matter what is happening, let's just go into that and all that. Yeah, work from home exactly. That's just avoiding it. You're not going at all. Let's assume now that you know it's not work from home for everybody, then what? Share can say, you know what, guys, the problem is really huge. Let's share this. Who is going? And I think I've seen this happen before in Nigeria. They say there is flood. If you alone goes into the flood, if you go into the flood alone, you get carried away. And everybody say, you know what if we make a chain of 10 people? If we make a chain of 10 people, we can go through the flood. What you've done is you've shared that risk. Instead of you absorbing the risk alone, you've now shared the risk among all of you to walk through the flood so that you can escape the flood. So you can see whenever you're doing your risk response, you have to always think about all of these things. And need I say that also risk can be whether threat or opportunity. Threat is what we call the negative risk, and opportunity is what we call the positive risk. Sometimes you can have positive risk. Let me think about an example of a positive risk. An example of a positive risk is most actually we don't really document this. Okay, let's say positive risk is, let's use the vaccine. It's just an assumption now. Let's use vaccine as an example. For the vaccine, someone has said, you know what, the potency of the first jab to the vaccine is no. Okay, let's use if you get the 2 jabs of the AstraZeneca, they are saying it doesn't really work on the beta variant or the beta or whatever they call it, the beta variant. It doesn't work on it. But for people that has gotten Pfizer, we notice that it's working on it. That was an opportunity. Meaning, don't forget, the stuff was just done for the alpha one, for the alpha variant. But now we can now see that, you know what, Pfizer can work on the beta variants. That's an opportunity. So instead of us rolling out AstraZeneca or Moderna, why not let us just dump all of those, since they are not effective on the beta variant or the gamma or the lambda or whatever they are seeing at the moment, and let us use the Pfizer on that. So you can see Pfizer, we can see the opportunity, instead of us going back to start doing the culturing, to start developing another vaccine that will tackle the beta variants or the gamma variant, we can now see that, you know what, Pfizer can work. So why not let us roll out Pfizer? That is what we call an opportunity. There's an opportunity for us to explore in that particular area. So that's what is called opportunity. And also there's something within the organization that is called the risk appetite. And everyone has got this. Everybody has got risk appetite. The risk appetite is, you know what, I was telling my wife, you know what, if I want to get it, if you want to give me a 40th birthday gift when I turn 40, the best birthday gift you can give to me is to go and do skydiving. And I could see her pleading the blood of Jesus to say, you know what, no, in the name of Jesus, we won't go to skydiving. you can see that risk appetite is quite different. My own risk appetite, I want to do skydiving. I want to do that. And someone will say, you know what, I can't even walk. The person cannot even jump a fence, not to now talk of doing the skydiving stuff. So you can see that we have different form of risk. Some people can pay, some can buy something of £50 online, while someone will say, some people can buy something worth of £2,000 online, while someone will say £2,000 online. No, I want to see what I want to buy. I want to go into the store and go and buy it. I can't just pay something online and expect them to deliver to me. No, I need to go into the store, pay for that thing, and get it done. You understand? So that is risk appetite. Different people with unique attitude of taking risk. A typical example is what happened during the Euro 2020 finals. Some boys had a very high risk appetite to take penalty, while some couldn't have it. Some, their risk level, their risk appetite, or attitude towards risk taking was quite low, and they stepped back. So in life, we have different attitude towards risk. Okay, all right. Let's talk about change. I said I'll mention the change control board when we get to this place. Any questions so far? It's 9 o'clock. So let me just give a pause for 2 minutes. If you have any question, you can type it and I'll pick it up. So I'll give 2 minutes. By 9:03, I'll start again. Oh, nobody seems to be typing. Not at all. Not at all. No, we're not. No, we're not. Okay, how popular is Scrum in Nigeria? Is picking up. It's picking up in Nigeria with the new tech environment. With the new tech environment in Nigeria, it is really, really picking up. But the big organizations are still very comfortable with using their waterfall any day, anytime. But Scrum is definitely picking up within the younger folks and the tech industry. At this point, no, they've carved out a Prince 2 Agile, which is foundation and practitioner as well. But the new syllabus from PMI is now 50% Agile, 50% Waterfall. So even though they carved out ACP, Agile Certified Professional, but they now discover, you know what, that will not work. So they are now having the new project management syllabus that is going to be rolled out in October from PMI is now 50% Waterfall, 50% Agile. So nobody is facing that out yet. Okay, let's continue. What if a major risk is missed on the project? Yeah. If a major risk is missed on a project, I'll tell you, I happen to sit on the board. I happen to sit on the board of a charity organization. They're about to build a massive structure here in East London. And while we were talking, we had a consultant coming to speak to us on some decisions some couple of weeks ago. And the guy said, you know what, based on the question you asked, they were a particular organization as well. They were into construction somewhere in central London, I think. So while they were doing their construction, let's just pick up a figure, just like the consultant also picked up a figure. Let's assume the project was going to cost £500,000. The project was going to cost £500,000. They projected that after spending this £500,000, they will be able to realize 1.2, meaning 700 profit on the whole thing. They missed a particular risk, and the risk was that train station was going to pass through the back of the new build. Because of that, instead of realizing 1.2 million pounds, they only, instead of 500 to jump to 1.2, the 500 dropped to 250. So they lost 250,000 pounds. You know what the compliance or whatever did? They had to bankrupt all the directors of that particular organization to pay back the 250,000 pounds, quote and unquote. So they had to go bankrupt. All the directors had to go bankrupt, all because they missed one risk. So you can see what missing a major risk can do on a project. And I've worked on projects where, you know what, they missed major risk. I was a PMO and they missed a major risk, and the project manager, they had to let the project manager go immediately and all that. So sometimes if you cannot salvage the situation, sometimes the project will just have to stop. We just have to refer back to our business case and look, okay, is it still worth it? If it's not, then stop it. There you go. Does that make any sense? So sometimes, yeah, major risks are missed, but that is why if it's a big project, they will definitely bring in a risk manager. And when they bring in a risk manager, and if you're the PMO, it's your job to make sure that risks are documented. It is not your job to identify risk, don't forget, but if you're a project manager, it is your job to work with the project team and the key stakeholders to point out risk within the project, to make sure you set up a risk workshop, make sure you have conversation with the expert to identify risk, make sure you look at the lessons learned document to look at risks that might have happened in the past or past project that you can pull into your own project. But as a PMO, your job as a PMO is to make sure that risks are not missed. Risks that are documented, let me put it that way. Risks that are documented are not missed. As a project manager, as a PMO, that is your job, because the risks are documented. On your risk register, you will see things. I'll show you a risk register later on. Let me see if I have it. Let me show you a risk register. If I have it. Risk register, where are you? Yes. Okay, this is a risk register. Can you all see my screen? Can you all still see my screen? Okay, yes, thank you, Tikla. Okay, so this is a risk register. Remember, I told you earlier on to say, you know, the risk description, what's the risk? What's the impact if the risk occurs? What is the action trigger? What is going to trigger this particular risk? What's the likelihood of this risk? Likelihood of it, what is the probability of it happening? How likely is it for this risk to happen? What is the impact if it should happen? Then what is the financial impact, or who is the owner? So you can see all of these risks. Your job as a project manager, as a PMO person, is to manage this register. This is not a single register. Let me put it that way. This is not a single register. You can have various registers. I've used this one in the past. That's why I used it here. This doesn't mean that this is how a risk register should look. If you go on Google, just type in risk log or risk register template, you will see various risk registers that will pop out to you in there. It makes sense. So that's how a risk register should look like. And it is your job to always look at this risk register. Like you can see, who is the owner? So you have to always chase the owner. Let's assume Deji is the owner of a particular risk. You have to always make sure weekly, if it's weekly, you've agreed to catch up on people as a project manager, as a PMO. You have to catch up on them weekly or you have to catch up on them once in 2 weeks to say, oh, this particular risk, this particular risk, how we're doing it with this particular risk. Do you think we can close this risk out now? Do you think there's no more a risk and all of that? The more you're saying there is no more a risk, then the next status meeting, you have to bring it up at the next status meeting to say, you know what, risk 002, risk 004, risk 101, we're closing down those risks because Deji mentioned it to me over the week when I was doing a catch-up with Deji to say, what about this one? Deji said, so if the risk if those particular 3 risks are not to be closed, people will challenge it at the meeting. So your job is to be raising those kind of dust at the meeting to say, you know what, and if it's to be closed, everybody will agree, yes, yeah, we can close that. That's not a problem. Yes, let's close that. Let's close that. Let's close that. Let's close that. Does that make any sense? Okay. Good. Someone is asking me that, yeah, no Scrum is not okay. Winfred is, yeah, Winfred, I've answered your question. I said at this moment, no, it's not included, it's not embedded in Prince 2, but Prince 2 developed another course that is called the Agile Project Management Foundation and Practitioner. Okay, they've developed another project, but for PMI's new syllabus that is coming out in October is 50% Agile and 50% Waterfall. But Prince 2 at the moment, Prince 2 Project Management is strictly Waterfall. If you want to look at that, while they have another course, they have another training that is called the Agile Project Management. They introduced, I think, 3 years ago or 4 years ago. They introduced Agile Project Management 4 years ago. So they have a course which is Foundation and Practitioner as well. Yeah, if you're yes. Okay, so change is bound to happen on any project. Change is expected to happen on any project. So because change is expected to happen, someone has a risk manager question. I missed that. I remember I read it. Okay, analyst said, but the project manager is not a major risk manager. No, it's not. But analyst, like I said, some projects, I've only worked on one project where we had a risk manager. On all the projects I've ever worked, the project manager and the PMO are expected to manage the risk on the project. So there was no, it was not just one project that we only had one risk manager who will always manage the risk, who will focus on the risk, but that doesn't mean this person, that doesn't mean we need to have risk manager on any project. The project manager is expected, it is responsibility or accountability. The project manager is accountable for all the risk on his project. Let me put it that way. So you can see that, meaning he will need to be on top of all of those risks. So while we're talking about risk as well, there is another one that is called the issue. So risk that has materialized are called issue, and you manage them the same way you're managing your risk. So if a risk should occur, like what someone asked earlier on, that what if a major risk is missed? A major risk is missed and it has happened, it will definitely become an issue. Makes sense? Okay, so you will also have what we call the issue log, definitely. So what's the purpose of change? To identify, assess, control any potential or approve changes to the project baselines. So there will always be changes to the project, to the schedule baseline. There will always be changes to the scope baseline. There will always be changes to the quality change baseline. There will always be changes to the cost baseline, as well as the resources. Sometimes risk. So what are we saying? We've got a project to deliver a website. We've got a project to deliver a website and all of that. We now discover, you know what? If we ask, because of GDPR, you've received all your requirements. You received all the requirements. The requirements say we need their date of birth, we need their gender, we need their father's maiden name, we need the death certificate of their great grandfather, and all of that. That's what your requirement is saying. But because of GDPR, you're not saying, you know what, guys, I know this is what you've signed. because of GDPR law, maybe we're halfway into the project when GDPR law came into play. So we can't really capture those data like that anymore. Then you have to raise a change request to say, based on regulation, so what can change? Regulation can change, can bring about change. The benefit, the viability of a project can bring about change to say, you know what, that thing we want to do. I'll give you a typical example. There was a particular company, I'm not sure what the name of the company is now. They used to produce, it's one of the airlines. It's one of the airlines company. You know what? They used to produce, they were producing, what is it called? They were producing airlines and all of that. But when the pandemic started, and there was no point producing aircraft because the forecast was like, you know what, the forecast at that time was 2 years. There won't be movement, there won't be that, there won't be production of that. You know what, they converted 2 of their lines to production of ventilators. What they were producing before was airline, but they converted 2 of their lines to producing ventilator. You can see that at that point in time, they need a change request to say, you know, we need a change request so that we can get money, so that we can get a timeline to be able to convert this particular production line to be producing ventilator. So you can see that business or the situation is bringing about a change within the organization. Okay. Someone is asking, how do you manage risk if you are not part of the operation team that carries out the work? So your job, like I said, your job is to look after the risk, How is the risk progressing? But you're working closely with the key stakeholders who are the owners of that risk to see, okay, this particular risk you mentioned, how are we doing with it? Have you mentioned, you remember I said you have to always have your regular meetings with these folks to see how that risk is being managed. So your job is to manage your log, to manage the risk in your log. Their job is to manage the risk on the job. Maybe I didn't make that clarification, Tommy. So your job is to manage the risk log, to manage the risk in the log, to make sure that the risk in the log is being updated, to make sure that the risk in the log is being looked after, while the technical guys or the key stakeholders that are working on the job, their job is to make sure that risk doesn't materialize. Makes sense? Okay. So you have to look for what we call request for change. You have to request for change. If you request for change, your change to go through a process. Maybe when you raise that change, to PMO. Sometimes some people use Word documents. Sometimes some people use Jira or Confluence, while some people use SharePoint, create a form in SharePoint for you to raise a change. When they raise a change, as a PMO, as a project manager, you want to make sure that all of these are well documented. The reason for the change, the impact of the change, the cost of the new change, or the time frame for the new change is being documented. And all of these, sometimes in your organization, remember we have the change authority. When I showed you the governance structure of the organization, I showed you the change authority. Within the change authority as well, sometimes change authority will meet once a month. Sometimes change authority will meet once in 2 weeks. All they are discussing at the change authority or the change control board are the changes within the project. So as a PMO, you're taking those changes that has been documented, impact has been done, and all of that. So you're taking it to the to the change authority to say, change authority, we have 7 changes we need to discuss today. And out of that 7 changes, 10 are within finance, 2 are within procurement, 1 is for sales, and all of that. I've got the project managers or the team leaders for those particular units in here today to talk to us about the changes. Even though they feel the changes in the SharePoint, and these are the forms, they've told us that this is a change, this is the impact of this change. They've told us that if we don't do this particular change, if we don't make this particular change, this will affect the overall project and all of that. So it's now left for the change authority to look at those changes and say, you know what, are we approving this change or are we rejecting this change? 2 things they do, reject or approve, or they say, you know what, while we're rejecting this change, what do we need to do? There are no enough information concerning that particular change, so we don't really have a better understanding of what that change is all about, or we need to drill down more into what this change is all about. So can you bring this change in the next meeting? But now, if that particular change cannot wait for the next meeting, let's assume all you do is once a month, and this change needs to happen now. that is where your governance structure will come in to say, you know what, there will always be terms of reference that will say, you know what, you can call an ad hoc change authority meeting, or you can get an off the meeting approval. Off the meeting approval is, you know what, you're sending email to everybody that should be on the change authority to say, look at this particular change, because we need this particular change to be approved, to be looked into now. We can't wait for the next change authority meeting. So please, can you look into this change and see if you want to approve? If anybody has got issues with it, they will raise it within the email. If not, they will tell you, I will approve it. I will approve it. I don't have a problem with that. I will approve. And before you know it, you can get your change approved before the next meeting. And that is how changes are. So you have to, first of all, capture your change, assess your change, propose options for responding to the change, decide whether it's a go or a no-go, whether accept or reject. Then you now implement the change or the changes. And as a PMO, as a project manager, you need to implement this particular change, or you communicate to the owner of that particular change to say, this change has been approved. Can you go ahead and make those changes? Does that make any sense? Okay. How do you manage risk if you're not? Okay, I've answered that. Progress. The next theme again is progress. Remember, in life, even as you are, you measure progress as you go along, or as you go on in life. Meaning, if you're 21, you're 32, you're 34, you're measuring your progress, say, you know what, I said I'll be able to achieve this by this time. What am I doing? Oh, I went out today. Before you leave the house in the morning, and before you left the house in the morning, you had your to-do list. And at the end of the day, you're having a mental, it might be a mental a note that you took in your head to say, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, da, 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 da. At the end of the day, when you go back home, you have to tick, check. What you're trying to do at that point in time, you're trying to measure your progress. So you're trying to monitor and compare your actual achievement against what you've planned at the end of the day. So that is what progress is all about. And on project, and as a project manager, this is also one of the babies. So you can see that as I've been talking since, all the 7 themes that we have are the babies of a project management professional. Whether you're a project manager, whether you're a PMO, and progress is even the baby of a PMO. To think about it, because this is where your reports will come into play. You have to develop a report within this area. So for some of you that will be definitely coming for the internship, definitely you will be working on risk register together, doing risk workshop, documenting all your risk, looking at what are the probability of occurrence, your issues. We'll definitely be doing reports every week. We'll be writing our reports every week to look at, okay, how are we doing? What are the milestones we'll say we'll cover, we will have achieved? How are we doing with those milestones? What are the risks we should be looking at in the next 2 weeks or in the next 1 week? So that is what progress is all about. Basically, for us to measure progress. And one of the ways we can measure progress is to look at our plan. How are we doing with the plan? How are we doing with our milestones? What exactly is working? There are 2 different types of controls. We need to put the time-driven controls as well as the event-driven controls. So like I said, you remember I said for your quality, you have to put your quality, you have to plan your quality into the plan. So those are events to say quality check, stage gate review. Those are events. While creating a regular interval, highlight reports, your progress report, highlight reports, your checkpoint reports, weekly, once in 2 weeks, once in 3 weeks, once in a month. Those are what we call the highlight report or the checkpoint report. And we'll be creating some of these reports during the internship as well. Okay. Any question about the themes before we move into the processes? And the processes is what I'll talk about for the next 10. I'll just run through the processes for 10 minutes for us to look at the PMI methodology for another 20 minutes. And that will be it for today. Any question? The time is always it's always running for me. All right, let's talk about the processes. maybe because I'm the one talking, but for some of you that are listening, sometimes so that is boring. Analyst is asking, please show the theme cascade. That's the theme. Is that what you're looking for? Business case, organization, quality, plans. What's the full meaning of Prince 2? Project in controlled environment. Oops. Project in a controlled environment. Okay. Let's continue. Okay, so for the 7 processes, remember we spoke about the principles, we've spoken about the themes now. So all of these things, when, and how, remember I said all of the 7 themes. You do all of the 7 themes within, in the project. So if you're saying within the project, okay, Ayo, do you think we need to plan? We plan from the beginning to the end without stopping at any point in time? Or are you saying, you know what, quality of the project will do quality right from the beginning, while from when they gave us a project mandate to the end of a project is when we're doing it? No. So that is what the process is talking about. For the 7 processes we have, what we do at the starting up of a project, what we do when we initiate a project, what we do when we manage product delivery, manage a stage boundary, what we do when we're controlling a stage or directing a stage, and also what we do at the end of it, when the project is finishing. When we want to close out a project, what do we do? When we want to start up a project, what do we do? When we're starting up a project, that is not when we're looking at how much is it going to cost us to do this. We're not looking at who is going to be in our change control board. We're just starting up a project. Guys, calm it. We're starting up a project. What do we need to do when we start up a project? And all of that. That is exactly what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so this is a process from start to finish of how a Prince 2 works. From start to finish, when you start up a project, what should the project manager be doing? As you can see here, as you can see during the start of a project, that is when you see, you know what, that is when we need to appoint our project manager. You appoint your project manager at this. The moment you appoint your project manager needs to start looking at previous lessons. Your project manager needs to appoint the project management team. That's roles and responsibilities. Who is going to be the project management team? The project manager needs to look at, okay, what exactly is the outline of the business case? Working with the business analyst or with the executive to look at what exactly is the business case outline. What are we going to have? Remember, when we started up, Hire was giving us his own outline, his own content, and all of that. So within the project, we need to look at what exactly is the outline of what we are using within this particular project. That is what the process is, what this process is all about. This is available on the internet. You can always pick it up to look at that. So let's look at them one after. Let's look at the 7 processes one after the other now. This is another structure. It's the same, just a different perspective entirely to look at that, to make it more beautiful. Starting up a project. When you start up a project, this is to ensure that prerequisites of initiating a project are in place. So at this particular point in time, we want to make sure that everything are in place. And what triggers this? The first thing that triggers this is a document called a project mandate. So remember, when we're talking about the governance, we said the project board or the corporate organization or project sponsor. The project sponsor gives the project manager a project mandate. Boom. The project mandate is like a contract. The project mandate is like an admission letter. The project mandate is like a visa, basically, that says, you know what, we have given you this visa, meaning with this visa, you can come into UK and work. You can come into UK and work. That is exactly what project mandate is all about. Project mandate is given to the project manager to say, we are giving you the authority to start this project, and you are the project manager to start up this project. That is what we see when we talk about a project mandate. So what triggers us? The moment you have a project mandate, that means the project is starting. So that is what triggers the startup of a project. And the moment you have that project mandate, you have the terms of reference for the project. sufficient information to identify who the executives are, who the project manager is, who the project team members will be. So that is what you have in your whatever, and you can't initiate a project unless you've started a project. So whenever you start a project, remember I told you earlier on, the things you're doing is, first of all, you are getting your outline business case in place. You know who the project manager of this particular project is because you have a project mandate, and you can start talking about the initiation stage plan of the document. Does that make any sense? So initiation stage plan of the document, the outline business case, who the project management team is, that is what you have at the start of a project. So you can see no major work at this point in time, just the early part of the work. And this is just the normal flow. I've written here, the project mandates appoint the project executives. Also, the project executives appoint the project manager. You have your draft outline, then you can now start creating your daily log. Your daily log is your risk register, logs like your risk register, logs like your lessons learned, things that needs to be done. That's what we call those daily logs. As you can see, capture previous lessons learned, project approach, prepare project brief, and prepare initiation stage plan. So at this level as well, at the startup of a project, you're preparing your project brief. What is a project brief? A project brief looks like a business case in a way, or looks like a project mandate in a way, but it's a well-documented project mandate. This project brief has got the brief of a project. It's got different organizations with different content. But the minimum content you want to see there is the assumption, the constraint, the risk that might happen, the project timeline, the overall project timeline, the key stakeholders. Those are the things you see in your project brief. Then when you move away from your startup of a project, you move away from your startup of a project, you then come to your initiating a project. During initiating a project, this is where you're doing most of your strategy. Remember, now we now have an outline business case. You now have you have to detail your business case now to look at the viability of what needs to be done. So this initiating a project is where the proper work is being done. Proper work is being done here. This is where a lot of planning. And if you look at the purple parts on this particular chart, you can see strategy. Now, this is the difference between PMI and Prince2. Prince2 will always use strategy. Prince2 will always use strategy, while initiating will use, why PMI will use plan. So you see risk management plan, configuration management plan, quality management plan. But for Prince2, you see risk management strategy, configuration management strategy. They are saying the same thing. Plan and strategy, they are saying the same thing. So when you see it, when you see your template within the organization, don't be thrown away and all that. So this is where proper planning is being done. Someone is asking that, what about the directing phase? Now, I'm coming to directing phase. That's why I'm not talking about that. But if you look at this particular structure, what this structure is telling you is, when you start up a project, you initiate a project, but while you're initiating the project, you're also, the directing is, if you see, directing is where you're now doing the work. Initiating is you're planning the work. A lot of work is being done during the planning. Directing is now when you're directing the work to be done. And majorly, the guys that are doing the directing of work is the project board, because this is where your change, this is where you authorize things, this is where your change control is more of authorization. They're directing to say, what, project manager, the project manager has gone and say, I've got this change, They say, okay, yeah, it's a good, you're going in the right direction. Okay, yeah, we'll approve this. Okay, we'll approve this change, go in that direction. We won't approve that, go in that direction. Because that's what directing a project is. It's the project board and all of that own this particular, and the project manager as well, because part of a project board, if you have to look at that owns the project board members own this directing part. This is where you authorize things. You're authorizing things. So you can see that even though they are starting with you from the beginning, the moment you get your project brief, you have to take your project brief to them for them to verify and approve before you go ahead. So that's what directing is about. So it's not really where the major work is being done, but this is where the approval is being given. Does that make sense? What's the difference between an organization's business plan and a business case? An organizational business plan basically is an overall plan of the organization. It's simple. But for business case, it's what the project, that particular project, what that project wants to achieve. There should be a business case for that particular project within the organization. So sometimes we can say that that project business case is a subset of what that project is, or what that business, of what the organizational business plan is all about. Organizational business plan. Let's pick up Mitsubishi. Let's pick up Mitsubishi, for example. The Mitsubishi organizational business plan is to go into automobile, is to go into oil and gas, is to go into food, is to go into home appliances. Assumption, you understand? But we're not saying that what we want to go into is the fridge home appliance now. The fridge home appliance, that means we need to write a business case for the fridge home appliance. You can see the organizational business plan is overall one, while the business case for this particular project is different, is a subset, or is just achieving the organizational business plan as a whole. Makes sense. So when we move from initiating, we now go into managing stage boundaries. Well, managing stage boundaries is say, you know what, from there to there, what are we managing? That's now when the delivery of work. This is now where the delivery of work is being done. We are now delivering the work. And you can see this is when now, while you're delivering the work, you have to measure. You have to measure what work is being done. You have to manage product delivery as well. So the product delivery majorly is where we're delivering the work. While you're delivering the work, you're controlling how the work is being done. Are we doing what we say we will do? Our progress report, is it working? Our performance report, is it working well? Our quality acceptance criteria, are we doing what we say? So you can see the three guys: managing stage boundary, controlling stage, and managing stage product. They are working hand in hand. While you are managing your product delivery, while you are managing how the product is being delivered, you are also controlling how the work is being done to be sure you're doing what needs to be done. And within that as well, you're saying, you know what, at this decision point, is there a go area? That's managing your stage boundary, because we say we're managing in stages, remember? So are we moving to the next stage? So that is how this is being run. And also at the end of the day, we go into closing a project. We'll go into closing of a project. If it's a stage boundary, if we're managing in stages, we initiate that, we manage product delivery, we control. Let's check the stage boundary. Are we good with the stage? Are we good with that particular stage? Yes, let's close it. Let's go again to the next stage. Let's close it. Let's go again to the next stage. Let's manage, let's control. Let's manage stage boundary. Let's go to the next stage. At the end of a closing, you have a follow-up action. You have your lessons learned report. You have your end project report. You update your project initiation document, update your project plan, update your issue register to make sure that all of these are being updated. For the next project, I might want to pick it up and look at what exactly is happening within your project. Then you need to close out your risk register, making sure all the risks are closed out, all the issues are closed out, quality acceptance criteria, all accepted, because you can't close your project unless all the product has been accepted quality-wise. Then you close it, then you close your daily log, and your lessons learned log is being closed and moved into the organization artifact office. Does that make any sense? So this is how Prince 2 is being, and remember, and what you are doing in all of these processes is you're making sure your business case is still viable. You're making sure that plan is being developed and followed through, risk is being managed, report is being given, quality is being done, right? So those are the 7 things you're managing within this particular environment. Any question? So I've said all of this. I've used that structure to explain all of this. Analyst is asking that with these arrows in the diagram, so much work, the project manager. So let me quickly say this. For all of this, so much work that needs to be done, the beautiful thing is most of these they are template driven. They are extremely template driven. A project manager, as it is there to coordinate the team. Is there to coordinate the team to make sure that all of those. Don't forget also that we said something that the seventh principle of Prince 2 is tailor to suit the project environment. So that doesn't mean all of those arrows needs to be obeyed. You just have to tailor it to whatever you're doing within your organization, and they are mostly template driven. It's all about you filling the form and making sure that everybody is working or filling the template and everybody's working the way they should work. Okay, I've got 20 minutes for me to run through the PMI framework. All right, for the PMI framework, I've said a lot about the PMI framework. We've said this, PMI focuses more on three things, which is the scope goals, the time goals, and the cost goals, and they call it the tripod, the project triple constraint, meaning to say, you know what, on your project, there's always a time constraint, there's always a cost constraint, and there will always be scope constraint. So as a project manager, PMI is saying your job is to make sure that you manage these three guys properly. Manage these three guys properly. Whenever you're on a project, it is your sole responsibility. While Prince 2 is giving responsibility to the team manager, to the project support, to the data, no, PMI gives all the responsibilities and all the accountabilities to the project manager to say, you know what, project manager, you are responsible for this. Okay, so those are the triple constraints. I shared this definition with you last week as well. So the project manager is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities for you to be able to achieve the project's requirement. Okay, so now operations. What is the difference between project management and operation? Clear difference. Based on unique activity, remember, project, as like I said last week, project has got is temporary, it's got a start and a finish time. Operations is continuous. What we do on our day-to-day basis in the office, what those functional offices do, accounting and all of that, is basically operations. What they go through is operations. It's more permanent, it's repetitive. They do report this month, month-end report, they do month-end, they go through the same cycle and all of that, and that's repetitive project. So that's what we call operations. It's more permanent, oversees budget and business expenses for the whole department, but for project, it's set and manages budget per project only. So whenever you're working, you must be able to differentiate what a project is and what an operation is on your project. This is a typical project lifecycle. Like I said earlier, like I said last week, I will still use my first few slides are slides from the old syllabus. It's not old because that's still what is being used now. But from October, it's going to change to what I will show you later on for PMI. For some of you in Canada, US, or Nigeria that are online today. Canada, US, or Nigeria, yeah, for some of you. This is how it works. They've got 10 knowledge areas within the project that we're working on. And this is, remember when I showed you the project, the 7 processes for Prince 2, I said we have start up a project, initiate a project, directing the project, manage state boundary, manage product delivery, controlling the project, and also closing the project. So we've got 7. For PMI said, you know what? Why stress yourself? Why? No, you won't get these lines. They say, why stress yourself? Why stress yourself, guys? You know what? It is you plan. You initiate a project, you plan a project, you execute a project, you monitor and control the project, and you close a project. Normal life. If you want to cook your food, what do? You initiate the project in your head to say, you know what? We're eating fried rice today. You plan. Okay, we need 3 cups. We need that green peas, we need that carrot, we need that, we need this, we need this, we need that, we need that, we need that. Okay, we pour that first, we pour that next, we did that. So that is what we call, planning. Then execute is your cooking itself. Then monitoring and controlling that envelopes them is you're checking if the salt okay, if the oil okay, there's a time I said it's going to cook for 10 minutes. Is it 10 minutes yet? Is it cooked for 10 minutes? Is it da? So what you're doing is monitoring and controlling. And at the end of the day, you close out your project by putting it up a fire to say, you know what, it's all done now. So that is just a typical way of managing a project that we are all used to. And that's what PMI says about a project. So PMI said, you know what, in this, you need 10 knowledge areas for you to be able to manage a project. Don't forget, when we spoke about Prince 2, we spoke about the 7 themes. So these guys here says, you know what, ours is 10 knowledge, we call it the knowledge areas, not themes, the knowledge area. And if you follow me very well, you will see the similarities in this particular stuff. For scope, they have the scope management, they have the schedule management, they have a cost management, and they have the quality management. If you notice, Prince 2 has a quality and Prince 2 has got plan. So for Prince 2, merge both scope and quality together. If you notice, and that's why they talk about quality, the scope of work to be done. And also for planning, Prince 2 merged for their plan, for the theme plan, Prince 2 merged schedule and cost together, if you remember. Next to that is resource management. Resource management is the organization. When Prince 2 spoke about organization, what they're talking about is resource management. When Prince 2 spoke about risk, that is risk management. Then communication, Prince 2 didn't talk anything about communications. They didn't say anything about procurement, and they didn't say anything about stakeholder as well. So Prince 2 I say, you know what, we need communication, because how are we going to communicate what needs to be done? And I think that is still done within organization when organization was talking about that. And also Prince 2 spoke about needs to be done with change. They didn't make any mention of change, but for their change is more of the changes is embedded in the first 4 guys, the first 4 knowledge in there. Has got change incorporated in that, as well as communication to say, you know what, you need to communicate your change whenever you have that change. So these are the 10 knowledge areas. Someone is saying, but I can only see 9. Okay, the 10th one is what is called a project integration. Now, integrating the whole 9 together to form a process is what the 10th one is saying, and that is what is called the integration management plan. Okay, so these are the 10 knowledge areas, but from October, you won't be seeing this structure anymore from PMI because they are changing that. So at the moment, they've also have different processes you need to go through within each of those knowledge areas and using your process groups. The process groups is the stages you go through. Remember, we said initiate, plan, execute, control, and close. So they have said, you know what, during your integration period, you need to develop a project charter. Project charter is the same thing as what the PMI calls a project mandate. Project mandate, remember, initiate the project. For PMI, project charter also initiates the project. So if you're looking for what triggers a project, it's a project charter. The project charter triggers a project to be started, to be done. And these are all the processes you have. Like I said, PMI2 is template driven. All of the things you're seeing, all of those tiny boxes you are seeing here, they have their template as well that you need to create, and you need to fill your forms while you're running your project with your people. So Prince 2 is, PMI is moving from what I showed you to this now. They're saying, you know what? We believe that projects should be interesting to do. It should not be rigid like what we've got with those knowledge areas. So they say, you know what? We're introducing 5 modules, creating a high-performing team. We need starting a project, doing the work, keep your team on track, and keep the business in mind. Remember, Prince 2 had this, keep the business in mind when they said business case. Business case, and they said business case is a living document. Business justification, remember, Prince 2 hammered on business justification. That is why PMI2 is coming out to say, you know what? PMI is now coming to say, you know what, keep the business in mind, keep your team on track, doing the work, starting a project, and creating a high-performing team. So when we talk about creating a high-performing team, what are we talking about? This is where building the teams comes in. I'm looking forward to this particular. Personally, I'm looking forward to this particular syllabus because it looks so interesting from the course content. It's a building a team, define the team ground rules, negotiate project agreement, empower the team members and the stakeholders, train your team members and stakeholders, engage and support virtual teams, build and share understanding about a project. Anyone that might have gone through a Scrum or Agile training before will definitely start seeing some things in here about the job of a Scrum Master here. The Scrum Master is there to build a team, to set the ground rules, to empower the team members and encourage them, train the team members and stakeholders, engage and support the virtual teams, build and share understanding about the project. Don't forget that this is what we do when we do our stand-up meeting every day. We're trying to build and share understanding about the project. And when we do our sprint retrospective, or we do the entire retrospective, you can see that this is making sense about creating a high-performing team. This is more like creating a Scrum team, basically. Okay, starting a project. We're not starting the project, determine appropriate project methodology and the methods and the practice. What are the methodologies? What are the methods and the practice to use? Then now let's sit down, let's plan and manage the scope of work. What's the scope of work? Let's plan, let's manage it. Plan and manage budget and resources. Let's plan and manage manage budget resources. The schedule, you can see now that they are still putting in those knowledge areas, but they are not just calling them out. Like this one you can see here is a scope. This is a cost or human resources. This is the schedule planning. This is quality project planning again coming in. This is procurement. This is project governance structure, stakeholders management or communication, and the project phase closure. You can see this looks really interesting. Say, how do I plan and manage procurement as a project manager? How do I plan and manage my schedule as a project manager? How do I manage and plan scope on this particular project as a project manager? This is what the course content is saying now. Now, module 3 is now saying doing the work. We need to assess while we are doing the work. What do we need to do? Remember, this is planning. This is us planning. This is us building the team. Let's build a team that will do the work. We now have a team. Let's come together. Let's plan how the work will be done. What are the things we need to plan? Now it is now time for us to do the work. Doing the work means let's assess and manage the risk. Let's execute project to deliver business value, to justify the business case. Let's manage communications. Let's engage stakeholders. Let's talk with our stakeholders. Let's see what they think, how they will manage the project. Let's create project artifacts. Project artifacts are more like the template, your reports, your risk register, and all of that. Those are what we call the artifacts. Manage project changes, change requests. How the changes are coming, how do we manage them? Manage project issues. Risk are now materializing into issues. How do we manage the project issues? Ensure knowledge transfer to project community. Lessons learned. What are the lessons learned? How are we transferring the knowledge to the project community? Let's assume we're delivering SAP, we're doing an SAP deployment, SAP 4HANA deployment. At the end of the day, we need to train, we need to do a knowledge transfer of what we've done to the project community so that they can carry on with the project. Okay. While you're doing that, while we are doing the work as well, remember you want to keep your team on track. You've built a team, you've planned with a team, you're doing the work. While you're doing the work, you need to make sure that you keep your team on track. Lead a team as a project manager, support the team performance, address and remove impediments, obstacles, and blockers. The job of the Scrum Master. Remember, on an agile project or in a sprint, manage conflicts. The job of a Scrum Master. Collaborate with stakeholders, mentor relevant stakeholders. You can see they are trying their best as well to make sure that Waterfall is more interesting as well now, and employ emotional intelligence to promote team performance. And the last module, keep the business in mind, manage compliance, requirements, evaluate and deliver project benefits and value, business case coming again here, evaluate and address internal and external business environment changes, support organizational change, employ continuous process improvement while you're on the project, make sure there is continuous improvement on the project. What has changed? Remember, I told you initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and control. Now we're not talking about people, process, and the business environment. So those are now the processes that we'll not be talking about. Initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and control again. We'll now be talking about the people, the process, and the business environment. So we're more concerned about the people, we're more concerned about the process, and also delivering value, the business environment. So what's the flow? What's the flow for the 2021 syllabus that is coming? Okay, those are the 5 things we've spoken about: keeping the business in mind, creating a high-performing team, starting the projects, doing the work, keeping the team on track, and also keeping the business in mind. Okay, so what other domains aligned to real life practices? For people, we want to make sure that you're managing conflict, you're leading the team, you're building the team, you're collaborating with the team, and you're mentoring relevant stakeholders. That's the people focus. The process focus is you're making sure that you're managing the budget so that you don't spend more than what is allocated. You're not you're delivering within the schedule. You're managing procurement. You're managing all the procurement, all the requests for proposal and third parties. Basically, you're managing all the third parties properly. You're managing the scope. You're not doing scope creep or gold plating, and also a well-established project governance, and you're ensuring knowledge transfer. And also for the business environment, you're compliant. You're delivering project benefits. You're evaluating changes for impact on scope, and you're supporting the organizational change within the process. Okay, so like I said, the new syllabus is going to be 50-50. The new syllabus is 50-50. Like you see, the one on the left-hand side is the waterfall, which is requirement, design, implementation, test, deploy, and maintain. While the agile stroke hybrid approach is, you do requirement, you plan, you design, you develop, you release, track, monitor, then you go again. You keep going. It's iterative. You keep going. You do requirements, different sprints, different approach, or same approach within different sprints that you do. Okay, any question for the day? Any question? Okay. I just need 3 minutes, 3 minutes more to talk about this guy here. All right. So as a project manager, your job basically is to look at this guy here. It's called, some people you see it as red, but I always call it the cardiac. So you'll see as red in some places, but for me to have a good understanding about it, I always call it the cardiac. What do we mean? Cardiac basically is talking about as a project manager, these guys here are what you're expected to come and manage, especially if you're a PMO person. As a PMO person, there will be logs for these 8 guys. And those logs, you're expected to manage those logs from start to finish of a project. Risk management, we've spoken about risk management today. You have to identify the risk, how things are going, what's the probability of occurring, and work with the key stakeholders to identify those risks and make sure that those risks are well managed by respective stakeholders. Next to that is issue management. You want to make sure issue is being managed. I've spoken a lot about change control today, so I'm not going to talk about change control again. Dependency management. Now, whenever you're doing your plan, whenever you're developing your plan, there will be dependencies. Dependencies will come up. What are we dependent on? Are we dependent on HP? Are we dependent on Dell to supply these? Are we dependent on government? Are we dependent on the regulation to be lifted or a regulation to be made? Are we dependent on that? Are we dependent on this particular person to supply these before we can continue this? So also you have the dependency log. You have to make sure that the dependencies are documented. And as a project manager, I always advise project manager to do what I call the dependency workshop. Get your guys into a room, or if it's online, get them into a meeting room and make sure you flesh out all the dependencies. If you're a PMO, your job is to facilitate because you're not technically inclined to understand what is happening within that space. Make sure dependencies are documented. Who's dependent on that? Who depends on these? Make sure all of these are well documented. An assumption, you have to document assumption as well as early on in the project, because assumption are said to be true until proven otherwise. So you have to, and most assumptions are turned to risk at the end of the day. If you document an assumption, you're saying it is true, and at the end of the day, you base your planning on it, and it doesn't come to fruition, it becomes an issue for you. So you have to make sure that assumptions are documented and they are well managed. Decisions. A lot of decisions will come on the project, and sometimes decisions will come, and if decisions are done in a meeting, meetings are not recorded, it's not via email. Someone can say, you know, I never made that decision. I didn't mention that. They can deny they didn't mention that decision. So make sure decisions that are made in a meeting are documented and names are assigned to it, and everybody is accepting that yes, that decision was made by me and all that. So as a PMO person, as a project manager, make sure that these things are documented. Actions. As a PMO person, this is your baby as well. When you go into meetings, you want to make sure you document actions. You're documenting minutes, and within that minute, I've worked in an organization where, in the past, where they want the minute to be written word for word. The minute of the meeting to be written word for word. While I've worked in other organizations where all they wanted was, you know what, I don't want word for word. I just want actions out of the meeting. Like where I'm working at the moment is actually actions out of the meeting. What are the actions that this guy said that guy said that? No, that's none of my business. What exactly are the actions? What are we doing? Then you document constraints also within the project as well. So these are all logs. I'm sure you can get on Google. If you get on Google, try and type in RAID log. If you type in RAID log, you will definitely see the logs of all of these. Then you can look at the content. For some of you that will be coming for the internship, definitely we will be documenting this, we'll be reviewing this, we'll be talking about this almost every week and see how updates are being done, how updates has been done, how you can challenge things on the project and all that. Okay, any question before we call it a day for today? Apologies, I'm 2 minutes. I spent a minute more than the time allotted. What's the difference between constraint? Yes, basically constraints are limitations. They might not be risk, they might just be limitation, but they might lead to risk at some time. A typical example is you are limited to say, you know what, you can only get 3 HR resources. Meanwhile, you need, you can only get 3 HR resources. So if you say you can only get 3 HR, that means you are limited, you are constrained to plan around three HR resources. Now, you can now risk a risk around that to say, you know what, there is a risk of us not doing the job, not finishing the job as a when due because we only have 3 HR resources. Meanwhile, we budgeted for 7 HR resources. So you can see constraint is a limitation, but sometimes it might lead to risk at the end of the day. All right, Ifeanyi, welcome. Any other question from anybody? Welcome. Yeah, you can link up. You can, if you have questions and all that, you can link up with me on LinkedIn. I respond better on LinkedIn if you have to. That's my name on LinkedIn. And for some of you that will be coming for the internship, we will definitely meet. and the internship to continue with this. Sorry, Annalise, I didn't get that. You might want to reframe your question. The project manager can use to document actions and decisions. Galaxy 20, welcome. Okay, sorry. Wonderful class. And what is the best tool a project manager can use to document actions and decisions? A log, an action log and decision log. It's an Excel spreadsheet, or sometimes it might be designed inside in a SharePoint. So you can, like I said, just go on, in the meeting, in the meeting. So in the meeting, most dependent on the kind of project you're working on, most people don't allow you to record meetings. In most organizations will tell you meetings are not allowed to be recorded because of the sensitivity or the kind of project you're working on, especially if you have to sign NDA. On all the projects I've worked on, I've signed NDA on every of the projects I've worked on in the UK. So if you're signing NDA, most of those projects will tell you can't record. Even if you want to record, you might need to speak to your program manager or your project manager to say, is it possible we record this? Because that will give me an opportunity to be able to record, to take the minutes properly and all of that. Sometimes they will agree, sometimes they will not agree, but most times it is not always allowed to take to record meetings when the project is very sensitive. Non-disclosure agreement. Lekon is asking, the book you recommended earlier, do they contain all the knowledge you are sharing? Yes, I sent the 2 textbooks to the to the Telegram chat room last week Wednesday. So you can check it. You can still, if you've missed that, just scroll up. I sent those 2 documents to that chat room, the 2 textbooks. All right, any other question? Yes, for the project management part, yes, Annalise, I will do. Yes, I think yes, you might not be able to see that Casio, but I think they will release a link. It's being done. I believe that is being done at the moment.
Yeah, the link has already been sent. If you are in the Telegram group, you should be able to see the link. Or I will ask the admin to resend it tonight as well. To be honest, the space is being filled up quickly. Actually, we've already have almost 30 people registered. And the last time, I think we only took 30 people actually. So I know for this set, we might take more than 30. Or if you really want to get on it, I think you should do it ASAP. Actually, I'll ask the admin to resend it again. So, yeah. Thanks. And for those guys that have registered, you should have been added to another group. If I need to say that, if you haven't been added to any group, please do contact the admin so that, or check your email or your spam so that you can, so there will be a link already been sent to you so that you can join the group. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening and wishing you guys all the best.
Thank you so much, Ayo, for this. Thank you. Yeah. Yes,